And the quorum, we have a quorum. The agenda is properly posted, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, then, we have public appearances. If you wish to speak for the public, we just ask that you share your name, your address, municipality, and hold your comments to no more than 3 minutes in case we have a number of people who would like to speak. With that, I'll pause. Anybody in the room or on Zoom can raise their hand. Next, then, is discuss and consider our meeting minutes from a village board meeting held on November 18th. Any questions, comments in regards to the meeting minutes as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
We have a motion second then. Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Then we move down to presentations of the board. We have Field Representative Morgan Solly from Congressman Mark Pocahan's office. You just have to press the little button that looks like a person talking, and then you're good to go.
Cool. Awesome. Hi, all. Thanks so much for having me. I won't take up too much of your time tonight, but did want to stop by to put a face to a name for those of you who don't know me or haven't met me before. My name is Morgan Solly, field representative for Congressman Pocan. My main purpose for attending tonight is to talk a bit about the direct impact that our office can make for you all and your constituents. So the first service that our office offers is kind of this big umbrella of constituent services. So this would be where our casework team serves as a liaison between a constituent and a federal agency. We cover all federal agency casework areas at our Madison office, which is where I work. But a few examples of topics we may be able to assist with would be passports, issues with the IRS, Veterans Affairs, Small Business Administration, and U.S. Department of Agriculture, just to name a few. Another service that our office can offer is letters of support from Mark. So if there's an organization or a community applying for a federal grant, oftentimes Mark can send along a letter of support to accompany that grant application. But just a reminder, it's just for federal grants. We wouldn't be able to extend to any other grants. Additionally, our office also has the ability to research potential grant opportunities for constituents. I'm able to submit grant research requests on behalf of a potential applicant, whether that be a village government or a nonprofit in the area. So if a constituent that you have is seeking, or you are seeking a federal grant opportunity, but you don't really know, like if you have a project in mind, but you don't know what might be available out there in the federal grants landscape, that would be something that our office can help research for you. Not always a guarantee that we'll be able to find anything, but certainly if there is a project and you just want to make sure that you're not missing anything, certainly something we can look into for you. I also coordinate all the grant services in our office. I will pass out some business cards after this, so please feel free to reach out to me on grants or literally anything else you could possibly think of. I'm super happy to be a resource for all of you. But going off of that, finally, myself and the rest of our team are in frequent contact with our legislative staff and the congressman to ensure any community needs are communicated directly to Mark, as well as his relevant policy staff over in DC. So happy to collect any opinions or pass along local concerns that are tied to federal policy. That's all I have. Happy to take questions if you have any. Also, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions if they come up after. My contact is always open to you, and if you know anyone who might need my contact, please feel free to pass it along to them. That's all I have.
All right, thanks, Morgan. Any questions from board members?
I just have a comment. I want to thank you for coming tonight. I've been on the board for over 5 years, and I don't remember actually meeting anyone face to face. So I really appreciate that connection, because sometimes we can feel very disconnected to what's going on in DC, even though it can impact us. So I really appreciate you coming tonight.
Oh, thank you. Totally glad to come. Thanks for making time for me.
All right. Any other comments or questions from board members? All right. Cool. Thanks, Morgan.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Next, then, we move to unfinished business, and that is to discuss and consider ordinance 09-2024, amending Chapter 267 related to special event permits. I think this is you, Rick.
So, have a revised ordinance in front of you all tonight. Tried to incorporate the discussion from last time regarding the special event permit. So, as discussed, we took away, or we basically exempted the village from the ordinance requirements. So anytime the village does a special event, it's not going to be subject to the ordinance or like have to pay itself any fees or anything like that. Created a framework, I guess, where the village could work with a third-party organization to do a special event, and created some criteria there that are content neutral, right? That I was kind of trying to get inspiration from other communities. We're kind of reinventing this a little bit here, but these are the criteria that I feel somewhat comfortable, or I guess more comfortable with, because they're content neutral. They're not based on what type of event it is. It's more or less like the organization that's involved. And there is one provision in there for like the cost of the village. That can be changed, it can be removed, but I figured that was something that I think the village board was interested in. So I guess any comments, revisions, happy to discuss.
Anything for Rick? Any questions, comments?
No, thanks for making all these changes. In section 2E1, you have 501c3s, is a C4, C6 not considered?
We could include it to just be like a nonprofit. If I recall, like is a C6, like that could be like a political action committee. C4, like that's why I was hesitant to include that one, just because it could potentially involve that type of organization.
Rick, I just have a question. I'm wondering why we need two different classes. I don't see any reference to class 1 or class 2 anywhere else.
So in the actual, so we're just making some changes to chapter 267. There are a lot of other provisions
Got
in the
it.
ordinance that call out the differences.
Okay.
So just here, we're just modifying the definition of class 2 to simplify it.
And just one other question. I noticed the part around not charging participants fees. Would that impact like a run? Is that considered a fee that people pay to participate?
I guess it would be attendees. We could arguably, yes, it would be, because they're attending the event. So, but like spectators, they wouldn't be charged a fee or anything like that. So that was something that we had, I remember where that, I remember I might have included one before or something like that, but basically, or like when we were talking about exempting nonprofits in general. So that is something that we could remove if you wanted to. Like I said, these are just suggestions on what we could include.
I guess I don't have any major strong opinions, but I also don't run events and know what would be impactful. So is there any way to clarify that this would be spectators versus participants? I don't know.
Yeah, well, off the top of my head, I would need to give it some thought. 'Cause if we're talking about like a run, right? Like they would pay some sort of registration fee.
Right.
So I think that would qualify as like an attendee or a participant. So I would just need to give it more thought on if we wanted to change that, or you could take it out entirely.
Yeah. I think, yeah, that would definitely influence or impact several events in Cottage Grove. That would make them not fall into that category. But I think to me, the way I didn't even read it with that lens. I read it as, you know, if you're hosting a festival and you're charging
That was
people to, you know,
that was
to come
definitely
to
the
it
thinking
then.
behind it. Is
Right,
like,
I get
yeah,
that.
you're charging an admission for somebody to access the event.
and roads are technically open to the public, so.
Right, but earlier we say a special event includes and it lists
Right.
walkathons, races. And I'm thinking of like, for example, the bike ride that UW does. I'm guessing they charge the participants as a fundraiser. Anyway, so I don't know that I want it completely gone.
Yeah,
but
there
I-
needs to be some modifications, because even the Fireman's Festival, there's charges, there's costs to participate. That's how they make money, right? So, and the same thing with the run, right? You're charging people as a participant.
Yeah, with Fireman's Festival, at least like that event would be exempt because it's we're specifically calling out the fire department as it not applying.
Where's that?
The last page.
Yeah, so the fire department and Deer Grove EMS are not going to be charged for the village services.
Under 5C.
Yep.
But Cindy, you'd want to take out the language on
I'm-
charging a fee to attendees, or?
I would take it out if it can't be modified in order to kind of convey the intent behind it.
Is an attendee different than a participant? Because really you're charging the participants, right?
So we could clarify like an attendee versus a participant. Mhm. Yeah, we could clarify section E4 to say like just clarify that it doesn't apply to any like participants that are in the event. Like registration fees to participate in the event.
Yeah, I think that just clarifies the intent better. If that's the only change, can we approve it with that change, or does it have to come back to us again?
If you're comfortable with it, like just sort of giving me the discretion to write it, like I can do that, but if you want to see it again, we can bring it back.
So the other question is, just under the main, that last sentence, the village may in its discretion choose to partner. We may choose in our discretion, and at one point you said that that was opening a can of worms?
So what we're saying is, yes, it's, I'm not saying that this is not without risk. So we need to be very careful about not making arbitrary decisions. So like basically if an organization meets these 6 criteria or 5 criteria plus an agreement, then they're basically eligible to work with the village. So I guess one way to look at this is the village is, I don't view it necessarily as like an event organizer trying to come to the village to say, hey, do this event with us. It's more or less like the village would be saying like, we're gonna do an event, we're gonna partner with this organization to do it. And so that's sort of how it's structured, is like the village is sort of the one initiating this type of event, if that makes sense.
When you say initiate, that kind of throws me.
So I'm not envisioning like an application process for a third party to come and apply for like the village to partner with them. But, so for instance, if the village said, okay, we want to hold a holiday parade in the winter, it could say, we're gonna sort of initiate that process, but we don't want to be the ones like doing all the organization legwork. We're gonna partner with the chamber to do it. So if the chamber satisfies these criteria, we would partner with the chamber.
Which the chamber doesn't satisfy all these criteria, because they're a 501c6
Okay,
or 4. They're one or the other.
okay.
So that's where my question was
I
coming
think
from.
there are 6.
Yeah. If 4 is political, then yeah.
So we could include 501c6, is that?
Yeah, I don't know the difference.
It is, chamber is
But they do charge participants in the holiday parade to be in the parade to, I guess, cover their costs. So then if it's covering our
But
costs.
there's no charge to
view it.
attendees.
Yeah, it's, right.
Yes, so that also.
And also, a 501c6 is beyond chambers of commerce. It's also real estate boards, boards of trade, and professional football leagues that we would also be exempting.
Rugby.
So this is getting messier and messier, Rick. I'm sorry.
So, I mean, it's really up to you all. I mean, we could just make it broader as like a nonprofit organization, but again, we're opening the door then to other types of nonprofits.
So I'm sorry, I guess I am confused now. So do they come to the village first with the request?
We could have it set up there. In my mind, I was envisioning just this would be not the village organizing it, but the village saying, we want to do this type of event in the village, and finding an organization to do that.
Just a point of clarification, so if there's a special event that doesn't align with the village values, does the board have discretion to reject that special event?
So there is discretion here for like partnering. We wouldn't be able to deny it based on what the content of the special event is. So like this is basically just talking about the fee portion of it. So they could still hold a special event. It's whether or not the village is working with them to put on the special event and exempting them from the fees.
So we already have kind of a relationship with the Chamber of Commerce because of the tourism entity. I don't know if there's a way we can rope that in, or like we sort of have an established relationship with the Colonial Club, for example, or like that, or is that just because we already have an established relationship with them mean anything?
That would make me a little bit uncomfortable to call it out like that. I mean, because the village contracts with a lot of different entities, and I want to make it as objective as possible. Yeah.
Isn't there greater risk without a special events thing? Because we don't have one right now.
Well, there is one right now. It's just that we would be we're modifying the current framework to account for all these.
Yeah.
So right now, it's everybody pays the fees. We don't have like any exemptions. So this is trying to accommodate the stakeholders.
Just a quick question. So have the events been paying the fees?
It doesn't go into effect until January 1st.
Got it. Thank you.
Can we remove the 501c3 and just leave it as nonprofit org under the Internal Revenue Code, period?
Yes, we could.
And then can we strike the will not charge fees?
So the number 4 there, under E4,
Yeah,
if that's what the board wants.
I would suggest that maybe. Not maybe. I
But
suggest
you're
that.
concerned about charging fees to participants. So could
If we
that language
can't-
be clarified so that the special will not charge fee to attendees, but may charge to participants and whatever it might be?
If that's possible, I guess I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think I could work something out. I just want to give it some thought on what the exact language would be.
And given the wording of in its discretion, even if an organization met all of 1 through 6 or 7, the village still has discretion to choose if they want to partner.
And like I said, we would have to be careful how we exercise that discretion. So we'll have to evaluate everyone like on its own, not looking at the message of it, but just, so that would be something that we would be working with the village board on as legal counsel, just to make sure we're in compliance with all of our legal duties.
And it's not to say that they couldn't have the event. It's
Correct.
just for waiving
They can
of
still
the
have the
fees.
event, correct.
I'm kind of hesitant to to just make it all nonprofit organizations because I think there's other ways we could, I mean, that's going to be, like you said, like football leagues and a lot of things that could be, I don't know, I'm hesitant on that.
I feel like it opens us up to having to use more discretion because more of those are going to come to us that then would have to be decided. Whereas if in our policy, could we just call out the chamber, nonprofit under 501c3, or the chamber that
I'd be
says-
hesitant to call out the chamber specifically, like, so we have the fire department and Fire Deer Grove EMS just because they're quasi-government entities that provide emergency services to the village, so they're not a subset of the village, but kind of. So calling out the chamber specifically, I wouldn't feel comfortable with.
So then it feels like there isn't a way to.
Unless you call out like specifically the 501c6s.
But then they also have to be principal place of business located in Cottage Grove and in existence for 5 years. Like there are other
Right, it would just be
layers
one
to
of
this
the,
too.
So they couldn't just establish a branch of their nonprofit in Cottage Grove because it would have to be for 5
Mhm.
years and.
And
correct.
this has to be the principal place, so they'd have to.
So,
I was just saying, in summary, where did we
so
land?
what I'm hearing is modify the charging attendees to say, to specify that you can charge like a participation registration fee, something like that. And then include 501c6s.
So just a point here, I think that Lions clubs are technically 501c4, not to throw a wrinkle in that.
See, I knew I had it listed for a reason.
We could make it all nonprofits. Again, they still have to satisfy all the criteria of being in existence for 5 years and located in the village.
But the way it's written, though, if there's something, like Heidi, you'd pointed out, if there's some nonprofit that absolutely doesn't align with our values, we have the option to say, we're not gonna waive all our fees, right?
Mhm.
That's still an option. So it's not like we've backed ourselves into a corner.
There is still discretion, and because this is basically just the first criteria.
Right, but the other thing I'm concerned about, rugby doesn't, I don't see them not being aligned with our values, but they may require a lot of resources for some events. So they're probably a nonprofit, but they also might be, I'm not sure what kind of nonprofit they would be, but you know, you can hope that they'd be good players in the arena and help contribute back to some of the costs, but some of those costs can get kind of high for us. But they may have already fallen under 501c3, I'm not sure what they're.
Yeah, I'm not sure what their status is.
But in terms of rugby, they'd still have, like, it's only if they spill out onto village property, because if they're contained within their
Yeah, it'd be just their
Structure that-
couple
They have like
events
3
a year.
tournaments a
Right,
year that I think
That are
would
big.
qualify.
So they'd still have to fill out a special event permit and go through all of the motions.
Yeah, just because of they have like 3 tournaments that they have to use more village space.
And we can't technically waive EMS fees, correct?
No, so this does not, because EMS charges its own fee for providing like an ambulance at an event. And so this would not apply to that. They still can charge that.
So is everybody comfortable with those 2 changes, Rick?
covered.
So is it all nonprofit orgs? Okay.
Are they're just the three categories? Right? Or are we changing it just to
Is it five?
nonprofit, period?
I mean, I can do it either way of nonprofit orgs or 501, just list out the C1, C3, 4, and 6.
Just put nonprofit, period.
I mean, why wouldn't you just leave it as the 501c3? And then at our discretion, if there's a worthy cause, we can still sponsor it, right? That's what the language says.
I think just bringing back some of that stakeholder feedback, I think that was some of the concern, is that there might be a year where the board would change their mind or not, or all of a sudden, like, there is no Lions pancake breakfast because the board says no fees, or you have to pay fees. Same thing with like the Chamber of Commerce and the parade. That's on Friday.
It's coming up.
I'm good with the changes. I just have a question. With these revisions, are there any events we currently have in the village that would actually pay fees? It feels like we have worked to exclude everybody from paying a fee. I just want to check and see, maybe we just leave it that there's no fee. Like, anyway, I just posed the question of, I can't think of an event that we would not have now found a way to waive the fees on.
I mean, you mentioned the cancer bike ride that comes through, so they don't have, their principal place isn't in the village.
They have
But that's not
it just
their
says
location.
a principal place, not the principal place. If I'm UW Health and reading it.
Principal place is principal place.
Yeah, that, I mean, I can change it to be the, but yeah.
And APDA is another one that comes to mind. American Parkinson's
Yeah.
Disease Association. They have their PD run in April.
So we'll be sharing this information with the organizations?
I think that's been going on all this year. That's why we had a
Okay.
draft.
Got it. Thanks.
I will bring those changes for next time.
Thanks, Rick, for, we keep coming up with stuff. I appreciate it.
That'll keep them out of trouble. All right, next then, discuss and consider applying a zoning amendment regarding the library parking. So this is in order to start the process. Aaron, I don't know if you want to comment on anything on it.
I think this is just a continuation from the discussion last time, because it wasn't a discuss and consider item at the last meeting. This would just be to formally request that the Plan Commission consider the change.
Yeah, and so just a reminder on process, like, so the village would submit the application, or I guess this would be directing staff to go forward with the application. We have to do a notice 2 weeks in advance to hold a public hearing. So that would go out presumably in the next week or two, and then this would be on for the January Plan Commission. They could either make a decision at that meeting or the following meeting, and then it would come to the village board.
You know, I'm just going to say what I said last time. You know, we're talking about a facility that's supposedly going to be used very heavily. It's on Highway BB, 4-lane road. It's not a controlled intersection. There's no overflow parking. I think the timing of this amendment is irresponsible, and I think not having overflow parking for a facility like that creates a safety situation, an unsafe condition for the potential visitors to the library. I think it's irresponsible. I think the timing is correct. That's my point.
I guess Aaron's reports showed that there are two situations in which the ordinance for parking were above 50% of the median compared to the surrounding areas, and that's group daycares and library museum. And so I think Plan Commission had decided months ago that if a library was ever on the horizon, that they would revisit that. The library is on the horizon, and I think the time is, I mean, it's considering making changes to the minimum amount of parking, and that's what we're asking them to do.
We expect to have the report from the architects
Next
later
time.
this month,
Next
next
time.
meeting. And so this would, we could always have the plan commission not take action if the architects seem to recommend that a different amount of parking, or this at least gets the ball rolling so they could discuss it if the architects recommend we change it, or
Yeah, and I
result
certainly
of the
understand the summary that Aaron put together, and I appreciate you doing that. And I understand kind of these real high-level metrics. We're talking about a specific location on Highway BB with 0 overflow parking, and people are going to be expected to cross Highway BB, a 4-lane road, when there's an overflow condition. I think it's irresponsible and it's unsafe.
I think that it's the library museum section of the ordinance that needs to be revised. And so this isn't the learning ladder ordinance, it's the library museum parking section,
But the timing is the learning ladder.
which would ultimately come back. I mean, then there's going to be architect plans, and we're going to take a look at it, and we're going to have a lot more input on the whole project.
And again, that's why I say the timing is premature. If we don't have the report from the architect and we haven't been down this path, I think from a high level, that particular site, the location, the lack of overflow, it's an unsafe situation and condition being created.
So we can wait until we get the report? I mean, is there urgency in changing this ordinance tonight to take action to ask the Plan Commission?
And would 2 more weeks still put it on a play? Would that put it on a play for the January meeting or no? In order to count all the days back. I mean, I'd like to see the report myself, but
So what happens if like a museum comes in and they build, and then they're subject to the same really strict requirements of having 75 spots? I don't know what it
I
actually
think it's
is.
48.
But 48. I didn't know that.
I guess just to go back to John's question, if you talk about this again on the 16th, we would have time to still get the notices in for January.
can we put this on future agenda items to have this as an agenda item after we discuss the architect's report, presentation?
I'm comfortable with
Does
that,
that sound?
as long as it doesn't impact the timeline. Everybody's nodding, is it okay?
Sure.
Okay. Then we'll just leave it on unfinished business for our next meeting. All right, then we'll move on to new business. Discuss and consider damage claim from Charter. This is also a closed session item.
So you could go into closed session on this if you want to discuss it more. If you want to just take action now, you can, but if there's anything you want to discuss, we can leave it for going into closed session. I believe Inga provided some background information to all of you.
If we can talk about it in open session, I would prefer that, but
You could talk about it in open session. I'd be hesitant to provide legal advice or guidance in there. So my answers would not be as forthcoming in open session.
Can we do it in closed session, and then
We can come out.
if there's a discuss and consider? Yeah.
Sounds good. Next time, we have an introduction from MadRep, the Livability Madison Region Economic Development Placement Opportunity. Discuss the opportunity and provide any possible direction to staff for possible future action of future board meeting. So we have Matt here.
How's everybody doing this evening?
Very well. Happy holidays to you. You want to turn on your mic there so people in Zoom can hear you as well? It's a little.
And if I'm joining via Zoom to show you some presentation materials, would I still need to turn the mic on?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can leave it on the whole time.
Just the three dots or
And the one right next to it. You got it. Is it cooperating for you?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, we can see it.
You see it okay? I'll turn down the volume on my computer so I don't get any reverb. Yeah. Well, thank you all for the opportunity to come in and talk to you about this is an initiative that has been in place with the Madison Region Economic Partnership now for the past 12 years. And I travel in, we're a national media company, and we work with economic development groups, city governments, and companies all across the country. And we've been working on this project now for 12 years. So in the Madison Region Economic Partnership is the main sponsoring organizations, but we go out and visit with the city governments, the villages, also the top employers, because this program connects with, business investors, but also talent attraction for the employers, but also the the tourism attraction for the different villages and cities. And as a national media company, we connect to an online audience of over 12 million annual visitors. And this particular program consists of a newsstand quality print publication. It's an annual program, so it always publishes in May of every year. And I left a copy on your desk areas there for you to see the print version. The digital version connects to a much larger audience. They connect to, say, housing developers, also the site selectors, relocation consultants. If you look at our scope of the actual different communities that we work in, let me show you an example of some of those different areas. This will kind of give you an idea of the national scope. We focus communities in Colorado, Tennessee. We've been working, in the Nashville market for almost 35 years. So the Nashville Economic Development Groups. I also work for the Tennessee Department of Economic Development, working on their statewide publication. So we've been very successful in helping communities, companies connect to their targeted audiences, whether it be, a community trying to attract housing developers. And, I was talking to Matt and also to Aaron about, this recent huge announcement that you had with Amazon, moving in their distribution center. And that's going to be a great opportunity for your community to not only attract the talent that Amazon's going to need, but also help in that relocation of the Amazon employees. And they're going to want to know, what the village, what does it have to offer as far as a place for us to live? Is the housing there? The school system's good? And that's the type of content that we focus on within our multimedia programs. So it'll really help in that transition with Amazon moving in town. But then also you have all these great festivals and so forth that you really be a great opportunity to promote those to not only people within the region, but statewide, and also visitors coming in from outside the state. So we just wanted to, you know, present the opportunity. We're currently, you know, one of your larger employers has actually been a longtime supporter of this initiative, Summit Credit Union. They're one of our larger investors, and they have multiple placements, and placements ranging from full page to half page placements. We also do really unique brand story placements. They're written editorials, and you know, really being able to tell your story and working with our writers and having the exact content that you want within the print, the digital, and also the other online platforms. And so if you look at an example of the current edition of the different platforms, you have one, the Cottage Grove livability platform, provides some facts and stats about your community, a map showing where it's located within the region. You have the second platform, which is the Livability Wisconsin platform. You'll see the different communities we work in within Madison region, Fox Cities. We also do digital programs for Sheboygan and Green Bay, you know, and other Wisconsin cities. You'll see that within the content. The site that we're looking at here has almost 1 million annual page views. So it's a very high traffic site. It's related to that, connecting to those different audiences. You can see the Summit Credit Union brand story that they do. You know, and so that's, you know, they want to connect to that audience and really provide the story that they want to focus on. And then plus, they're also big supporters of MadRep because they believe in what MadRep does, and you know, attracting that business investment to the area, attracting the talent for the employers, and which is so important because even though we have the Madison colleges and UW-Madison, which is also a big supporter of this initiative, the system, and also the campus here, you know, in the capital city, they're supporting it. So, you know, this is a very important initiative because this is for economic development. This is the true voice that is getting out there to not only a regional, but statewide and national and global audience. You know, telling the story about the Madison region, which is, you know, very important at this, as you know, in economic development, if you're not telling your story, no one's going to hear it. So, and that's the audience that we really focus on, and helping the Madison region really connect to those different audiences to help your growth and prosperity, help your region grow. But then you also have the national platform through our livability site, and Madison is one of our top 100 best places to live, work, play. We have national recognition from MarketWatch, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, that actually promote our content to tell the story. So these stories about the Madison region are nationally syndicated. You know, they're reaching a large national audience. So, and then if you look at the digital version, you can see the past editions, with this being year 12 that we're currently working on. Here's the current annual edition of the print publication that you have a hard copy of. The Sun Prairie, you know, full page placement, the MadRep placement, Monona. It's really a high quality print publication, but it also has the nice advantage of sharing it on social media channels and uploading it to your own website, which that's what UW-Madison, they put it on their career page. So whenever they have somebody they're trying to recruit, the hospitals put it on their website, the career page, so it really helps them really tell the story about why it's great to move to the Madison region and live here and work here. But then you also have, you know, one of the top major distributors of the publication, supporters of the program, the Madison Region Economic Development Corporation. So we have the true stakeholders involved in really supporting this initiative. And we wanted to provide you all an opportunity, and with just like we saw the village of Sun Prairie, and we have some new communities on board this year. The village of Lake Delton is actually coming on board and doing a two-page brand story, paid editorial placement. And this initiative is actually supported by the investors that support in it with a placement, to be able to tell your story or, talk about your community. And this kind of gives you even an example of individual, placements. This is the city of Muncie, Indiana, and East Central Indiana. This is a sponsored content section they did within their regional program. And it talks about, the city of Muncie, small town hospitality, but big enough for everybody. The arts and culture aspect of the community, outdoor rec and community events. So that kind of gives you an example. And if you look at the Fox cities, I mean, even small towns, and forgive me on the pronunciation, some of you might be able to pronounce it better than I can. It's spelled Kaukauna. Yeah, this is a full-page brand story that they did, really wanting to promote their community. So it's, even the small little towns see the opportunities to invest and really be able to, be a part of an initiative like that within their own regions. And that's actually the Fox Cities publication that we do. Yeah. Do you all have any questions or any concerns so far that maybe I could help address?
On the online platform, when you click on the links, does it give you any information of how many people may visit the site or anything like that?
Oh, yes. It was provided in the information packet. So if you go to the attachment that was part of your packet, it's going to be titled 2025 to 26 Annual Edition of Livability Mastery Economic Development. The first page will go over the print distribution, within the region. Of course, it's also, you'll get copies of the publication. You could provide it to the site selectors you're working with, some of the housing developers you're trying to attract. Be a great tool from that standpoint. But then also on page 2, it'll go over the social media campaigns, and we do 4 actually different stories on our national sites on LinkedIn and Facebook. It provides all those great demographics for you. Yeah. And that's a nice, really unique thing about the brand stories. At the end of the campaign, the 1-year campaign, I'll provide you complete analytics. So you'll see what type of return on investment that you had and tell you what cities where the traffic is coming from. And we already know from the site for the Madison region, the city pages for the Madison region, people are looking at moving into this area, from Chicago, from New York, California. And they're looking at it because those places are becoming so expensive. They can't afford to live in those areas, especially the remote workers. They can live anywhere. So it's a great opportunity to attract them into your own community. Yeah, so it's and then even the companies. I remember talking to the city of Portage, city manager, and he goes, "Yeah, Matt, it's funny because we every year we had a gentleman, a company owner in Chicago, that would come up and hunt, outside of Portage, and he'd bring his wife, and he goes, his wife fell in love with our community, and he loved to come here and hunt, and he goes, actually because of, that, he actually decided to move his company there and all his employees. So, I mean, those are really great success stories about the region and what it has to offer. Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. Any questions, additional questions or comments for Matt?
I guess my question is, you're looking for people that are interested in being involved in next year's published May 2025 addition, is that?
Yeah,
okay.
yep, that's exactly right.
And
Yeah.
what kind of timeline are you looking at for commitments on that?
Yeah, I believe your next board meeting is going to be, what, in 2 weeks? It would be helpful to try and get an answer by that time frame, because we're currently 8 weeks into production of the next annual edition. And a lot of the placements, they're first come, first serve. So, and limited availability. And so it'd be great if we could, possibly, if it's possible, they have some type of answer back by then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on a region-wide planning commission, and we do partner with MadRep also, and
I saw that, yeah.
getting, people envisioning opening a business or investing their lives and in the region is, you want them to feel a connection to that, and I think we have a lot to offer in Cottage Grove for business and building a life here too. So I think it's, it's an interesting opportunity. So thank you.
No, thank you, Heidi, because in the past, I've had an opportunity to work with Matt and Aaron on, placements for the village. So, but it's been, I think, almost maybe 4 or 5 years since you all participated. So we hope that you're going to be able to tell your story of why it's a great place to live, work, play, and invest. Yeah. And if you look at placement opportunities, I'll bring up this slide so it kind of helps you, because it can be sometimes kind of busy. This is the rate sheet that was included in your packets. So they range from, say, for example, Sun Prairie's done in the past, 2-page spread in the opening page 2 and 3. Placements like the back cover, of course, are already, renewed and not available. This would be the brand story options in a 2-page spread, like what the village of Delton did. So, and then, but we also are offering a full page like this particular placement that we looked at earlier. I think it was Kiwanis. Yeah, this said Kiwanis. This would be a full page example. And it's nice because we actually design it, we write it. The only thing that you all would need to submit would just be the photos. And then we send back a proof for final approval. So it's really just the reservations that we're trying to in the next few weeks.
I guess my other question is more to staff to bring something like this back. I don't think we had anything specific put out in the budget. I'm not sure if it falls under something else or.
Yeah, so right now, I think on the agenda item, what I think Matt and Aaron might be looking for is if the board would like to move forward, I'd come back with a budget plan and how this would be funded or how this could be funded until the board kind of decides the direction they want to take. We haven't done that research yet.
And of course, with it being published next year, we can delay the billing, of course, into the 2025 calendar year. Yeah. Do any of you have any concerns on possibly how it wouldn't make sense for the community to participate?
I think what's maybe going through board members' minds right now, we just passed the budget.
Oh, okay.
So, and we didn't have this in front of us, and so that's where I think we'd need to lean on staff to understand, is there a spot within their current budget in order to do anything along this line? So that's, and I think we certainly can do that and have it as an agenda item and discuss it maybe next time, and then be able to give you an answer.
Okay. And I'd love the opportunity to meet with your chamber too, to see if they might want to participate too, or maybe even they could be a partner with the village.
I guess that was my question, Cameron. Is this considered, could this be considered or fall under tourism at all? I know you just said that you need to think about it.
I think, yes. I mean, long story short, yes, it could. I think that the the definition is broad, would this result in additional overnight stays? I could get there. Everybody's definition is a little bit different. I think, kind of at a high level look, there's a large portion of this cost that would be TID eligible, meaning that the TID districts could help pay for that, which would provide significant relief. So depending on what option the board would ultimately go with, the impact on the general fund or even the legacy capital project fund might be pretty minor. So again, we'll take a look.
And this is an example actually how Monona funded it through their tourism. And we work with many other CVBs that partner with their economic city governments, and helping with the funding kind of makes it more economical that way sometimes.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Matt. We got our homework to do.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. We look forward to telling your all story. You have such a unique one, that's for sure.
Just to make it clear and obvious to anybody who's listening, staff would provide a direction that we should be providing a proposal or proposed way to fund this at the next budget or the next board meeting.
Yeah, for the board to talk about, yeah.
Okay.
In addition to that, it's kind of like the scope, like what is, beginning with end in mind, how would it look? I don't know, Matt, if you've given any thought to what this would look like in terms of how it would be presented, how it would be, the size of the spread, et cetera.
And also to that end, I guess, you said minimal staff resources, but if there were additional staff resources that were needed, I guess I'd like to know that.
Yeah.
I guess we'd lean on you guys for how you'd want it to look. I mean, it could, if you prefer a 2-page, 1-page, or what, I mean, it's really up to you guys. I really don't know how it would look. I'm not a creative person, so they would make it look good.
And I guess just final thought too, how does this fit into the overall communications plan? Or does it?
You'll actually have full rights to the brand story placements with hard copy, so you can reuse them, share them on your social media. They'll actually even being showcased on the Livability Wisconsin site on the businesses and brands to know.
But I think, Cindy, you bring up a good point. Right? We need a bigger picture communication plan, and this is one little piece. So we just need to understand that.
Yeah. And I'll communicate with, I guess, Aaron and Matt on if there are any additional resources needed from me as far as the already provided proposal information and timelines. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next then, discuss and consider resolution to support WEDAC Vibrant Spaces Grant application. There is the resolution in our packet. I don't know if there's any questions, comments regarding this. This is just to get approval to kind of move forward with the grant application.
Yeah, so just high level, just kind of last meeting, we kind of talked about the MOU on kind of what roles and responsibilities were between staff, library board members. So grants was one of the things that we talked about would be something that Cindy and I would bring to the board whenever there are opportunities that we would recommend proceeding. We kind of define that as minimum cost and the ability if a possible referendum would pass, it wouldn't result in any penalties for the village. So I've worked with this funding before. I've mentioned to Matt and Cindy the cost of the compliance cost of this, should we get awarded, would be about $3,000 a year and about 10 hours of staff time. Given the dollar amount that we're talking about here, which I believe, Cindy, is $50,000. In my opinion, that makes it a worthwhile grant to start to consider. So again, the resolution is just based off of the timeline that we would need to submit for this grant would purely be based off so we could apply for it.
So I guess I got a question. So how does this type of grant work when we don't have an approved referendum?
So we would likely wait until we were awarded, if we were awarded the funds, and then likely we would have a period of time that we would have to accept the funds. By the time we accept the funds, I wouldn't do that prior to a referendum being passed. So it would need to be post any possible referendum. Yes, but just because of the period of time that this grant is just closes is why this is in front of you.
Got it. So it's if it did get awarded before the referendum, it would be a contingent grant? Is that what I understand?
We would have to actually, most grant processes, you kind of step one, get authorization, apply, and then you actually have to accept the distribution of funds. A lot of times communities will apply for grants not knowing a match portion or other components have been fully secured. It's a risk that some municipalities take, but then ultimately having the ability to reject the grant or say, no, this project didn't move forward, so therefore we're not going to accept distribution of those funds. And at that point, we would close out that grant with the WEDC organization.
I think there's 2 distribution periods. The work would have to be started in 2025, but completed by December 31st, 26.
And they're very good to work with for extended periods of performance. Like I said, I don't know of a project that they haven't asked that they haven't extended. I mean, there's some that have been extended up to 5 years. So it's all about just getting the funds and then, working with them. They're a really great organization to work with.
Yeah, the language in the resolution is pulled directly from the funding opportunity, which is why certain things are worded that way. But I took a deep dive into it today, and I think that we score very well on their matrix. So.
I'll make a motion that we support the resolution of support for WEDC Vibrant Spaces grant application.
No, second.
We have a motion and second then. Any other discussion? All those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Maybe abstain? Motion carries. Then we move into reports from village boards, commissions, and committees, starting off with Pier Court. Cindy.
Pier Court met on November 19th at 5 p.m. via Zoom. It was a pretty short meeting. We had an update from Briar Patch. So Ms. Smith shared that year to date there's been 19 referrals. 12 cases have been closed, 11 of which have been successful. 7 cases are still pending, which just means that they're actively kind of going through their necessary means. And there's also, she wanted to highlight that there were a lot of additional outcomes, which included referral to a lot of Briar Patch resources, but then also referral for parental support resources as well. We are still working to update documents in a MOU between the legal team, Chief Gary, and Briar Patch. My understanding is that they're all working together. And so we hope to have more information, I guess, this month, and we potentially might have a December meeting, but otherwise we meet in January 21st. And there's still the discussion of kind of the reorganization where police would take over kind of Pier Court and kind of rearrange the workflow. And that's kind of also what they're kind of working through. So eventually, maybe after January, you won't have a report from me from Pier Court steering.
All right. Any questions? Thanks, Cindy. You're still up. Library Board, we've got a few discussing considers there.
Yeah, okay. So the Library Board, we met on Wednesday, November 20th. Facilities met at 5 p.m. and then the full Library Board met at 6 p.m. We had in our Library Board meeting had our annual election of officers, and all of the same individuals are holding the same positions as last year. I gave an update on the Library Board budget, and then we had the discuss and considers that are also on our agenda tonight, which are the naming of the library, the donation and naming policy, and the naming or recognition opportunities that all are part of the capital campaign that is getting up and running. We had a programming report from Tracy. We've had 115 programs at 23 venues with 3,402 attendees as of November 9th. We had bat story time, a clay maker space, and CPR, so kind of a wide range of activities for Cottage Grove. We did win the Cottage Grove Best Entertainment for Children award, and our story walk in partnership with the Parks Department was featured by the Association of Bookmobile and Outreach Services, kind of national recognition for the story walk, and they featured the Centennial Story Walk. We approved our bills list and gave a brief update about the facilities, which was mostly just kind of discussing the parking and some of the kind of key spaces and furnishing fixtures, which we kind of brainstormed a little bit based on our previous discussions at other board meetings. I think that's about it. Our next meeting is Wednesday, December 18th at 5 and 6 p.m.
All right.
So yeah, is there 3 discuss and considers tonight?
There are.
Okay, so the first one is the, consider the name, this is without recognition associated with it, or a naming opportunity associated with it. And we, as the library board, approved the Cottage Grove Community Library. It's important that we have this kind of established as we start to put together some of our materials, how we're talking about the building, and then also as we're going through some negotiations with potential donors about naming rights, how that would fit together.
Any questions, comments? This is all, as you said earlier, tied into the capital campaign
Right.
effort. Okay.
Yes.
But it doesn't discourage people from donating enough to have naming rights if it's already named?
No. So yeah, we need a name so that we can talk about it appropriately. But then if it was like the Cindy Cottage Grove Community Library, which it will not be because I don't have $2 million.
Any other questions or comments in regards to discuss and consider Cottage Grove Community Library?
Yeah, I think that, obviously, from what you're talking about, Cindy, having some sort of name or what to call it is good. What I struggle with is when we start giving it a name, now we're providing some sort of advocacy that when it comes time for a referendum, people are like, well, there already is a library, and it's called the Cottage Grove Community Library. So I'm a little disconnected. I understand the need for some sort of name. I don't necessarily think it's the time to begin to formally naming a library that hasn't been approved.
I appreciate those comments, Peter. I think in order for us to run a communication campaign and a capital campaign, we probably should arrive on a name that we all agree with officially. So it does feel a little bit like naming my chicken before it hatches, but I also understand the need for it. So I'll make a motion that we approve the Cottage Grove Community Library as the name of a future library.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then. Any other discussion?
And I'll just say I understand the need for being able to call it something, but having a formal motion and giving it a name, I think, is advocacy that it's premature given where we're at in the process of allowing the voters of Cottage Grove to weigh in.
Peter, quick question. Is there a way you think we could do it without official motion?
I mean, we could call it the Cottage Grove Library. I mean, that's what we're talking about, is the Cottage Grove Library. I mean, if there's a need to give it a name, I think what we're doing is we're taking something that is still in front of the voters and we're saying, well, it's got a name. It becomes more formal, and we start going down this path of implied advocacy, which I think is absolutely not what should be done. And I don't know, Rick, if you got any thoughts on that, but I think this formality of naming something that isn't approved is the struggle I have. And I understand for the grants and some of the capital fundraising, you got to give it a name. But calling it the Cottage Grove Library is more than adequate, I think, in terms of a generic sense.
I guess I don't have any concerns from a legal standpoint about putting a name to it at this point. I can see that there may be confusion, I guess, if you're talking about that, but I like confusion among voters, I don't know. But I don't think there's a legal prohibition about establishing a name for the library at this point.
Rick, would it be better if the motion included a potential library and the name in the context of what Cindy said is for the fund, the capital campaign and communication purposes?
Yes, you could, for clarification, just say like the future Cottage Grove Community Library or something to that effect, or potential, yeah.
I'll add my motion to include the word potential. So potential future library name, Cottage Grove Community Library is the motion I made.
Okay. The second's comfortable with that?
I didn't second.
Lauren did, yeah,
Yes.
that's what I was looking
Yes,
for. Thank
sorry.
you. I was
I
trying-
lagged there, sorry.
I was only gonna use, it's like, all right. I'm gonna pick on somebody tonight. All right. Any other discussion? All right, having no further discussion, all those in favor then?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain?
I'm going to abstain from that.
Okay. A motion carries. Next up, discuss and consider donation naming policy. So if it's not the Cottage Grove Community Library potential, it could be named something by a donor. Is that
Right,
what we're getting
so,
at?
we have, I think our entire policy manual is linked in the agenda tonight. But the only one, that I wanted to discuss was on page 14, which is the recognition and donation policy. So, the purpose obviously is, we're working towards this capital campaign and we need to have, donor policies so that donors understand what, their, money is going to and how we're, and then also the other important part is how we're acknowledging the donors. And so we have, obviously I've worked with Jody Sweeney on this and then also compared our donor policies to a lot of the other area libraries to make sure that we're all in line. But it's about recognition, gifts being pledged over a certain amount of time, that we are approving the naming opportunities and recognition rights, which is the next discuss and consider, that they would remain, the naming opportunity would remain in effect for the useful life of the item, which is typically 25 years. These can all change at any point, and we had some suggested wording of through the generosity of or in memory of or in honor of. So these are all very standard policies that go along with capital campaigns.
I guess my questions, more for record keeping of the pledges. If someone wants something specifically named, then it's attached to their donation, so that's kept in some kind of record along with their payment or their pledge. I guess I'm just wondering about staff time and keeping track of.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and Cindy and I have talked about this too, there's a difference between 400 donations at a very nominal value and 20 donations that are significant. So at this time, I'd feel uncomfortable putting a time value. I'm confident we have the systems in place to be able to track. One of the things we had kind of talked about was anything going over 3 years would start to kind of have a kind of a compounding, staff time effect. And so that was a good kind of in between. And I would say, should the board approve, discuss and consider the donations and naming policy, 5 eventually should be revisited if there's a formal endowment that's set up, because there would be specific language in the setting up in the endowment, and we'd want to make sure that those marry, and it'd be very specific that distributions are meant for those purposes. So that's just kind of my only note on that.
Right, and we're really working off of kind of 2 right now, number 2 in the policy, and the other ones are there for when they kind of arise.
Perfect. And just a high level, we don't ever take, like when the personnel policy or other policies come, there might be a cover memo, but because they are included in a formal packet, we don't separate pages from policies. So that's why you see the whole policy in front of you today. It wasn't picking on this specific one, it was the inclusion.
Might want to consider discussing the 25-year time period as far as the location, make it specific to that location versus is it for sure carrying over to any possible future facility, because you might need to fundraise for that future facility, and you might want to consider different amounts for the naming rights of a brand new facility.
No, yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. I think, that's a pipe dream, right, to have a future, another facility that we have to, the village board would have to deal with. I think the 25 years, or the life, I think it's in there, as like the life of the item for the naming rights is appropriate. If there were to be a new library or an expansion or renovation where there would be maybe perhaps additional, another capital campaign and another naming right associated with it, I think the library board then could probably address it 25 years down the road.
So under 2, you've got the, those who prefer to remain anonymous may do so.
Yeah.
So did we figure out how we were going to do that? You were talking about last time about canceling the Sweeney Capital fundraising contract with the village and having the Friends take over, or where are we at with that?
So I think any anonymous donations are going to have to go through the Friends, and then the Friends will have to make a pledge on their behalf, or on an anonymous donation to the village, because I don't know if that's going to be an issue that we run into. We're trying to kind of obviously sort through a lot of these things.
That was I guess the biggest comment I had on the policy was the anonymous nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think in the policy we can guarantee that. I mean, we can say we're not going to publicize it, but if somebody were to ask for those records, that would be public information.
And I can change that from the,
Yeah, so that would be under 2 and 6.
Yep. but the Friends have agreed to take any anonymous donations. They would be willing to funnel through them and then pledge to that donation to the village.
So does that part just get striked from this policy?
I have the ability as library board president to make minor modifications like that.
You almost have to strike it. Right, if
I
that's
can.
how, if that-
You might.
I'm sorry, you almost have to strike it, because if, Rick, we can't keep it confidential, it is public record if it's the library board, but if it's through the Friends, I think that's your workarounds, what you're
Yeah.
talking about. So for this policy, it has to come out.
Yeah, because this is the library board's policy, or the village's policy, so I think
I can
it's just
edit it.
easiest to strike it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, so it, talks about the donation policy, and I guess the question I have is this. So, again, we're going down this path and we don't have an approved referendum. It doesn't speak to any reimbursements or what the policy is in the event, right? I mean, at this point in time, we haven't gone to referendum.
Yep.
If there is a no, what happens to the funds and what happens to the donors?
Sure, on the pledge form, which is in process as well, these are all contingent on a successful referendum. So we're not,
Which isn't included in the packet.
no, which is not done. And then I think Cameron maybe mentioned, these are 3-year contingent pledges. And then the Extraordinary Women Campaign is a 5-year pledge. We're still working out some of the details with that.
Do we want to include it all together in one discussion or one approval?
I don't think the pledge form needs, are you talking about the pledge form?
Pledge form and even if there's adjustments for the 5-year that you guys want to consider, the library board wants to consider?
I'm not sure if the pledge form, I don't think that the plan was to have the pledge form come back for board approval. I think that other things everything's covered that we've talked about, I guess, except for the 3 and 5 year, which isn't in the policy as it is.
Well, the other thing is, if the form is talking about how funds are going to be managed, because they are contingent until we get through the referendum, that either needs to be here or we got to approve that form, I think.
So I can, yeah, sorry to interrupt. So my office is just, we're in the process of reviewing the pledge form, so it's not finalized at this point. It isn't something that I don't think has to come back to the village board, but if it's something you'd like to see before we provide it to potential donors, we can certainly bring it back.
I think the language of how the village, through the library board, is dealing with these contingent donations, I would like to see that language and how it's being presented.
I am interested in how it's presented, although I'm perfectly fine delegating to our legal team that knows the parameters that we have to work in, and like I'm okay with delegating that. I think I trust the legal team to know where our boundaries are. They've kept us in line on that so far.
Heidi, I agree with you.
Okay, so I will make the edit to remove the anonymous out of our policy manual.
I'll make a motion to approve the donation and naming policy.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then. Any other discussion?
Just for the record, I struggle with the whole process, as I've said many times, that we're doing a lot of things that would happen after we've got a plan, and we're kind of in front of the horse. So for the record, I just want to make the comment that a lot of this stuff is premature as it relates to the voters' input.
Any other discussion? All right, having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain?
I'm going to abstain as well.
All right. Motion carries. Next then, discuss and consider naming opportunities.
Okay, there's a list of recognition naming opportunities for the potential Cottage Grove Community Library. If it's okay, would like to also offer a suggestion to add the $150,000 giving level of technology through the library and patron services and circulation desk, moving those up to that giving level. But otherwise, this actually we took this list and made a lot of modifications when JP and I met with the architects, and then we brought it to the facilities committee, and then we brought it to the library board, and now it is in front of you. So, and obviously, Ms. Sweeney has also taken a look and given a lot of guidance for what's most appropriate.
So these naming pledges go towards the capital?
So, yes, so these would be, it's the capital campaign, so most likely, yes, capital, unless it's an outright cash donation to the village, and then it could potentially go to other.
So Cameron, if it goes towards the capital, say there's a $2 million donation for the name, which would be great. So it's over 3 years, so how would that fold into that we would float?
Yeah, so I guess it becomes a complicated question if the facility plus remodel is 3.5 million and we only have 2 million that's over 3 years. We still would have to take debt out, but then this would be set aside. Year 1 would probably directly reduce the debt, but then year 2 and 3, we would be able to offset the planned debt. But if the library is only 2 million, then we would still take out debt, but it would then have no cost, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess here's my question. So say the whole project costs $2 million, and we get $2 million for naming rights. hey, the library's paid for it, that's great, but it's over a 3-year time horizon. So there's going to be some debt issuance involved. More importantly, is there some sort of commitment, right? So it's $2 million over 3 years, $667,000 a year. In year 2, the donor says, "No, I'm moving to Missouri. I'm out." Is there going to be a contract, or how do we deal with the debt necessary to make the project happen under the context of a 3-year pledge?
Yep, that's a great question. So I think Rick and I have talked about this a little bit. You know, and this becomes, you know, kind of like what I mentioned before. You have 400 pledges. It's not like we're going to go out door to door and say, okay, it's year 2 payment. You know, hopefully, you know, people honor their pledge, send in. But like in this instance, I don't know if we do anything special. Rick, if you want to weigh in.
My thinking was for these more significant donations, we would have a donor agreement. So rather than just like a pledge form saying that, you know, I'm giving you $1,000 for every year for 3 years. I don't know where we draw the line, if it's over 25,000 or 50,000, but having for these more significant ones, especially when you're talking about naming rights, we would have a donor agreement that specifies like, you were going to pay us, you know, first of the year every year. Otherwise, we're not going to name this after you, right? So there would be that sort of protection. Whether or not we would go and collect, I guess that would be a decision for the board to make. Obviously, it's like a large donation, and it goes into the finances of the village for how it's planning, but that would be a decision we would have to make if for some reason they go back on their agreement.
Yeah, that's the thing, is because we're going to make decisions based on how much debt we're going to issue for this, based on the potential outcome of the capital fundraising, right? And if it's over this extended period, it just needs to be thought out how that's going to have to work, because there is risk.
Well, and I think that's where we also lean on the Sweeney Group, who has done this for however many decades she's been doing it. And she has worked with.
But she can't provide the guarantee that we need for issuing debt.
Right. I mean, that's risk that's being assumed, yeah.
So we would likely issue GO debt, meaning any shortfall of payments would be covered in full faith by the levy. I think it would be very difficult without contracts signed and to do revenue bonds or other, which would be secured by pledges. It also would be a little bit more expensive with interest rates to go that route, because they're assuming risk that revenue is going to be there. So yeah, I think there's a long way to go yet on this.
Is it common to have pledged over 3? I mean, it sounds like it's been thoroughly discussed, but I just want to ask.
It's typically 5 years. We've moved it to 3 based on the size of the project and also the kind of immediate urgency. Capital campaigns are also run typically over years, not within 2 months. So there's been an extraordinary amount of work of people's time that have been going into a lot of this.
But typically, capital campaigns aren't the cornerstone of actually making a commitment for a facility like this. It's improvements, it's expansions, it's that sort of thing, because
or new construction. Yeah.
So when we write the question, if we decide to write a referendum question, we could take into account the pledges and say, maybe we're only going to reduce it by the pledges from the first year or something. And then the other ones are great. They can make improvements over time or pay off debt faster than assumed.
And you see campaigns where it's like, if you don't hit your goal, like it doesn't happen. I think this is obviously a very realistic goal, and I don't think we're going to have a problem not hitting it. But these are, what's presented, I guess, in front of you tonight is just our tools that I need to keep moving. I think we were riding and building the bicycle at the same time, is what Jody and I have said every single phone call we've had every single day. So there's just a lot of moving parts, and we want to get as much information as we can in the next month.
So in 2022, the Sweeney Group released a feasibility study that said, you know, it would be reasonable to be able to collect $1 to $2 million. Through kind of discussion with staff and Cindy, instead of getting a hyper-specific number on what's actually collected. And some of the communications will probably reference that feasibility study and say, you know, if $1 million is raised, it could potentially reduce the tax impact by X. If $2 million is raised, it could potentially decrease the tax impact by Y. I think we got to the point where we're just like, how do we establish a cutoff? How do we use an exact number? So by using that range, it has to be in your guys' decision come January, if that's a significant enough amount. But ultimately, when we're communicating out to residents, we'll just utilize that 2022 study and again, communicating that this is the potential cost savings.
All right, anything else?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Are we committing ourselves to having all of these things? So like a discovery garden, outdoor event area, if somebody says, I want to give my money specifically to that, and then for whatever reason, that isn't in the plans.
Yeah, I think that these are things that are in typical libraries and that you can expect to see in the potential Cottage Grove Community Library. And if someone came and said, I really want something, a robot in the library, and they wanted to fully fund that, I'm sure we could find a way to make that happen, even though the robot's not on our list.
Any other questions regarding this?
Yeah,
Comments?
I'm just thinking about what you said, Sarah. So when you think about the scope of the building that's currently being considered, which one of these are in, which one are out, like a discovery garden and outdoor events area? Obviously, there's a lot of landscaping work that needs to be done. Landscaping get really expensive really quick. So is that in or out, or is it contingent on this? And what is it gonna cost? Is it $500,000 to build a discovery garden and outdoor center? So if we get the pledge, we build it. If we don't, we don't. Is that kind of?
Potentially, I guess, right now we're in, doing cultivation calls. And then we're gonna move, we're in a kind of in a silent phase. And then eventually we move into a more public phase for a lot of these larger ticket items. But by the time this is going to be an ongoing campaign most likely. And when we have better architect and engineering designs, potentially in the summer, if everything kind of goes through, I think there are more opportunities. There are more people that are gonna be more excited to donate. Some of them, we might see this filling up even faster.
Do you think we need to have the specificity of what, so right now, before the referendum gets put on, could we just have there will be naming rights at these levels, and then after the referendum, say what those are?
I think it
No?
needs to be specific.
Does it? I mean,
Yes.
certainly the name, if you're gonna name the library, I totally get that. If you wanna name it, 2 million donation over 3 years, you can name the library. As you go down the list and you go down to the $50,000 level, does it need to be that specific? I don't think so. I think for the purpose of where we're at, if we had a design and you've got something that you could sink your teeth into, yeah, I totally agree with that. But right now, we're at a very, very high level in terms of what this looks like. So I'm with Sarah here. I think, the name of the library, fine, and if you want to contribute to the library, you can contribute to the library, but breaking it down into, I don't know how many categories are all the way down to the 250 levels, a little too much.
This is what I need to take, and Jody and I need to do the work.
And I see you have the kind of disclaimer at the top of these recognition opportunities are based on conceptual plans. Could there be, I don't know, anything, maybe it's not needed, but just that says finalized naming rights would happen later, or I don't know. I guess just do we have a way to?
I think we can maybe potentially incorporate that into the pledge form. That we could, contact them once we have full plans and verify that they still want to put their name on it.
I think to have this list, have a conceptual plan would certainly go along with it, but there isn't one. And so to have it this detail without a conceptual plan is just a total disconnect.
So I think that the plan is that there is going to be a conceptual plan, that the architects are supposed to give us a schematic of blocks of reading area, circulation desk, all the things that are in a typical library that make a library operate, and that's also what's represented here.
So what we're hoping to get from the architect would include all of these things in December, or whenever they finish their project, or when?
In 2 weeks, we won't have this level.
I mean, I don't expect them to have bricks on the ground on the architect design that says, naming right here. I think that these are things that you're going to see in the library that have been talked about at the facilities committee and the library board and in the meetings that I've had with the architects. And so that's why they're here. We need them listed here because this is what we use in order to go and talk to potential donors. And the people that are donating at this point in time are people who are very invested in libraries, understand libraries, want to put their names on very specific things. The Sweeney Group has been doing this for a really long time. This is the recommendation from the consultants, and so this is what I'm bringing forward.
I guess I don't understand why you're opposed to it. I mean, if you're giving $50,000, we want to know where you're putting the money towards.
No, so like Monona, they don't have a discovery garden and an outdoor events area, right? So you're saying it's in all libraries. I think very few have that. So we're talking about a zone and a pledge for something that we don't know how that's going to come together. I mean, certainly there's space over at this facility to do that. What does it cost? What does it look like? Is it in? Is it out? We go to referendum. Is it in the referendum question or not? $500,000 is a big swing.
Again, tool that I need to go in order to get the $500,000 or $2 million.
Yep, you do pull out an example, like, I don't know if we'll have that or not. And, I mean, there is the opportunity to have that there, and if someone wants to give $500,000, they would, I guess they could just donate $500,000 and say, do with what you want, because we want this project to, reduce the impact. But if that's what they want their money to go to, I guess I do see both sides of it. And then some of the other smaller things, like, of course, we're going to have bookshelves or a fiction area or a nonfiction area. Like, I know the plans aren't specifically drawn out yet, but like generally
So there's one under 10,000, outdoor community garden. So if I donate 10,000, I can name the outdoor community garden. Are we going to have an outdoor community garden? And that's not a lot of money, $10,000 to re-landscape what's over there right now. If you've been through that, and if you know anything about landscaping or what it would take, it's going to cost a lot more than that. So I'm going to put my name on it, and what is the connection between my expectation, right? And that's where I think there's just way too much detail for something that's conceptual. I think some of the big bucket items, yes, if you want to donate, these are potential areas that in the future, but to commit a name to something like that, it's just way too early.
These are all conversations that happen too. So we have meetings, we sit down with donors, and we have conversations around these things. And we're very clear that these are conceptual plans, that it's going to go to a referendum, that it's, all of the things still need to happen. And
so which I've got a pledge sheet. So my naming opportunity here, if I give 10,000, I can name the outdoor community garden.
Yep.
And I don't have a
that becomes part
conceptual
of, then a referendum passes, we have all of these people who have donated, and then that becomes part of our plan that we're all starting to work towards.
There needs to be some sort of alignment with what the commitment is and what the expectation is. So if they're going to commit money, the expectation is they're going to get something that hasn't been defined yet. And that falls back to the village. So if the village, through the library board and through this fundraising, we get people to donate money and there's a disconnect in what we can deliver, I think that's irresponsible. And that's where I think, because there isn't even a conceptual plan for us to talk about and work against, we're creating buckets that are potentially a disconnect. The big number, the naming it and donating and potentially, getting your name in some of these areas is fine, but I think the way it's laid out is way too detailed.
I don't think I can't be any more clear. This is the level of detail that we need to work with. It is acceptable. This is exactly what we are contracting with the Sweeney Group to do.
But we're not contracting with our residents for some of the things that are on here. And we're making a commitment to donors that we're going to put this stuff in, and we don't know if it's there or not, because it's not even conceptualized in any sort of conceptual plan.
Could that be covered in the pledge form?
I think the pledge form, it needs to be a little bit watered down in terms of when you make a $10,000 donation, that you're gonna get this, because that's the way it's presented.
Could we include something like may, and like at the 100,000 giving level, pledge of some possible naming opportunities include, and then we list the 3.
There you go.
Could we do
That's a
that?
good idea. Yeah, I like that because it takes the village away from making a finite commitment and an expectation that goes with a dollar amount that's being delivered. So I don't know, Cindy, if that works for what you're trying to accomplish, but I think that's an important modification.
I mean, I think I can be very specific that these are based on conceptual plans, they're subject to change, like we value input from stakeholders. But again, I mean, this is the work that this is the document we need in order to move forward and to go out to donors.
But why can't you, like Sarah says, under 10,000, if you pledge over 10,000, you could potentially participate in naming rights in these areas without a commitment. Because when you make a commitment, there's an expectation. And if that expectation isn't met, then egg is on the face of the village as we represent the library board as a village.
Are you gonna say something?
I'm thinking about it.
I think that there's strategy involved, and I'm not the capital campaign expert here, and I know that she's trained me on a lot of strategy, but when you have a list of opportunities and you see that a lot of them are starting to be reserved, you're more likely, there's negotiation or strategy that can happen when people see that these items are starting to be taken up. And it's part of, I mean, these aren't set in stone promises necessarily, especially how we can word them with conceptual plans, subject to change.
But when
And I
things
think
are
we
being
know
taken,
that.
but when things are being taken and it's off the list, then all of a sudden there is a connection.
This is capital campaign strategy.
I understand
I
that,
can't.
and I've been involved with some stuff like this, but being this specific is not responsible. I think having these categories, like Sarah has suggested, that under the 10,000 giving level, you will have an opportunity to participate in naming of these. I think beyond that, I think without a conceptual plan, here's the building, here's the areas, you want your name on this, it costs this. Without that level of concept, we've got nothing but minutia.
And I would hate to think that we're sitting in here as experts in this area and we can make these types of changes to a document and then we hurt ourselves, or we shoot ourselves in the foot that this is gonna make the capital campaign strategy that much harder.
We're being
And
responsible. We're not,
this is not irresponsible.
if you can't deliver on what a donor has committed, it's irresponsible.
I guess it's a little, cart before the horse. The referendum has to pass too. I mean, that's the other.
Right, these
Huge
are still
thing.
contingent.
Yeah,
three-year
absolutely,
contingent
absolutely.
pledges.
There's
The
a lot
donor
of
might not
things.
give the money. We're being irresponsible. Like, we can't,
When you've
gotta
got
move forward on this.
When you've got details about certain specific areas, we don't even have a concept plan to say, where is that? And can you even deliver? If we can't deliver on it, that's where I struggle. If we're gonna allow someone to pledge money to the library, and for whatever reason we can't deliver on that, that's a problem.
All right, so this is a discuss and consider. I think we've just got different differences in opinion, and certainly in order to move us ahead, is anybody willing to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the naming opportunities with asterisks. Possible naming opportunities include,
Add the $150,000 giving level.
and add the $150,000 giving level to the list. Did you catch that, Lisa?
Can you say that one more time, please?
Sure. So approve it with the $150,000 giving level, the technology throughout the library, patron services and circulation desk, and the overarching asterisks that possible naming opportunities include, and are subject to change. Do we need to, that it's based on conceptual plans and based on conceptual plans?
What did you say?
Maybe we can read it, maybe you can read back what, the sentence.
I should have made it.
Sorry, Lisa.
Yeah, I'm
You're doing a great job.
certain that this is a complete sentence, but,
Yes,
to approve possible with the 150 giving level with the technology desk over possible naming, including and subject to change based on conceptual plans.
Close.
Because there's, two things.
yeah, the first thing was the 150,000 giving level.
And these get moved. They were down here. So moving the technology throughout the library and the patron services and circulation desk from the lower levels to the $150,000 level.
So you're adding a new $150,000 level
Yes.
and including in it
The
patron.
technology throughout the library and
Mhm.
patron services and circulation desk, which were at lower levels.
The first three items under 50,000,
Yes.
you're moving up to a new $150,000
Yes,
level.
because I was missing that level.
And then the other portion, I want to make this sentence make sense because it's possible naming opportunities include, they're subject to change and based on conceptual plans. Kind of the three pieces of that sentence. When someone's making a pledge, it's based on conceptual plans. They're possible naming opportunities. This is just a list of possibilities. We don't have them nailed down, and they're subject to change.
So basically the first, kind of the statement on top could say, these potential recognition opportunities are based on conceptual plans and are subject to change.
Yes, perfect.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then. Any other discussion? All those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain?
I'm gonna abstain.
I'm gonna abstain as well. All right, moving on then to Parks Rec. Heidi?
All right, so we met on November 21st, and we had a new concept for the Lakewood subdivision on Taylor Street with their parkland dedication that would come as part of their potential development that's expected to come through Plan Commission as long as they keep moving forward with it. And the Parks Department agreed with, the concepts of that parkland dedication. We also talked about the 2025 splash pad closing date because it was noticed how warm it was in September, and maybe we should consider keeping it open longer past Labor Day. So we talked that over, and it was kind of a 10 to 6, so we'd close a little bit earlier, but keep the splash pad going for littles to kind of come in the peak of the day when it'd be warm and a little bit after school. So just testing that out for 2025. I don't know, Sean, if you have anything to add.
Ultimate closing date of no later than September 30, but if it looks like the weather is going to change, we might close earlier than that.
Just note that they're more likely than not gonna be a budgetary impact on that if you're running the water for an extra month. So just keep in mind that you might see overages in that account.
We did talk about that at committee, and the bather load is generally lower, so the evaporation, it's not on as much, so we probably wouldn't be adding additional water as often. So it's kind of, the costs will, be lower than the peak time of splash pad use. We talked about Houston Park. So remember, it's kind of like two phases that we went across last year and this year to make the improvements at Houston Park to make it fully accessible and kind of move some things around so we can get that path to make things fully accessible. We're going to wait until the Lakewood subdivision and is it a pumping station or some kind of utility was going to come through, but as it turns out, it won't really impact what we're doing anyway. So Strand is working through the final plans for that to go out for bid next year.
January.
And January.
Yep.
Coming up quickly. And the very exciting news with the Bark Park update, tomorrow is Bark Park opening day. So it's very
7:30 a.m.
Excellent.
So get the dogs ready to run around. So the signs are set up, the double gates all ready to go, some picnic tables, and then the dog waste stations, which were generously donated by the Girl Scouts. So yes, I'm assuming there'll be some social media going out.
It's already out.
All right, perfect. And then, because we usually don't meet in December anyway, so especially with the holidays, so our next meeting is January 23rd.
I just wanted to say thank you to the Parks Department for considering the splash pad thing. That was something I asked them to talk about, and I appreciate them doing that. I've had a few parents talk to me about their frustration about it being like 80 degrees in September and trying to go there and seeing that it's closed, so I appreciate you guys taking that up.
Next, then we'll move to Deer Grove EMS. Cindy or Peter?
I'll do it. So we approved the minutes of both open and closed sessions. We approved the October financials. We're financially on track to meet the 2024 Deer Grove EMS budget, which is great. The recruiting efforts for the 2 additional EMTs is going well. They had a lot of interest. There were 8 candidates interviewed on 11/20, and they had another 4 pending. So, and the comments were a lot of high-quality candidates, which is really encouraging. Trending to finish the year with around 1,400 calls. We had some really great feedback from a resident where her husband had collapsed. Deer Grove EMS arrived at the scene, got him to the hospital. He had a heart attack. They did surgery, replaced his heart valve, and she was very, very thankful that Deer Grove EMS had saved his life, which was really a touching call. There was an audio call that we were able to listen to. Let's see here. The Deer Grove EMS 2025 budget was approved by all municipalities, so that's great. We approved a letter of engagement with Johnson Block for the annual audit, and then the last thing was really good news that EMS-MC, the billing agency, reduced their rates from 5 3/4% to 5% based on the amount of pre-work that's being done that Mandy's doing before it actually gets submitted for billing. So that was really good. And then we closed. That was it.
Nice. All right, thank you, Peter. NADVAC landfill. Maureen or
All right,
Sarah?
we met on November 25th and paid the bills and looked at the testing results, and there's nothing noteworthy to mention there. And next meeting, January 27th.
Like those kind of meetings for that one. Then the fire district. Are you taking that one too?
Yes, I will take that one. So we met also on the 25th and went through the chief's report, decided to approve the lift assist policy, so ambulance companies or other places that call for lift assistance in not any emergency situation, and there's a whole policy you can read on it. We will be charging them $500 per call after an initial warning is sent to them. And then I'm going to skip over the Emergency Service Building Repair Fund for a minute, just to wrap up the rest of the meeting. We also talked about adding a training prop behind the station, which is kind of like a prop. You would think of it, they're not going to actually light it on fire, but it's like a simulation kind of apparatus. And so that is what they think they'd like to spend the funds that they earn through the Fireman Festival on that. And so we approved that. That was pretty much the meeting. Though back to.
I just wanted to add
Yes.
to that other municipalities may also participate
Yes,
with that as
thank
well.
you. Yeah. Anything else I missed? All right, so then back to the Emergency Services Building Repair Fund. If you remember in our discussion around the budget, we did not include $20,000 money to go into that ESB fund until we had a 5-year plan, was I think what the motion was coming out of this board, and we also did not approve the lighting expense in addition to what's already in the emergency services repair fund. So we did initiate a discussion at the fire commission. I'm looking for my notes here on that. And
Sarah, I could provide more context whenever you're ready.
thanks, Cameron. I'll just kind of maybe just share what was shared at the meeting, and then I'll turn it over to Cameron for more discussion. Ultimately, I think what Chris, Lorene, and I are looking for is just, how you'd like us to go back to the fire commission on the village's behalf. From the perspective of folks on the commission from the township, the Emergency Service Building Fund is for emergencies. Money that can't be spent, or money that isn't spent, can go towards larger planned purchases like a roof, for example, but that the initial money there is there for emergency repair, something that the money is needed for right away. There was reference to the initial motion that was made a number of years ago when the fund was created. And so we talked to Cameron, and I will turn it over to Cameron now to share more info.
Yeah, so just a couple things here. Really what again, with the budget motion was, it wasn't necessarily that the village needed a 5-year plan. However, given that the funds have reached almost $80,000, the ask was, what is going to be the intended use of those funds? So with another $40,000, that balance would get near $120,000. Again, this is from the fire district contract. Those funds should be used for the purposes of maintaining and repairing the emergency service building. So part of that discussion during the budget was, why isn't that $5,000 lighting repair coming out of that fund? Why isn't it being treated as an additional request? And through some conversations with Sarah, this is where I think it would be a really good opportunity to go back to the commission and really define what this maintaining and repairing the emergency service building is. Also, maybe establishing a level that fund would be at. So given that there's $80,000, it's not saying that there shouldn't be some money there to address things that can't. But at this point, contributing again and getting it up to that 120,000, that seems like an awful big expense not to come directly to the village board for a repair at that size. The village started contributing to this in 2014. Through 2014 through 2019, the village and town both contributed $7,000. In 2020, 2021, $10,000, and then 22, 23, and 24 was $20,000 each year. Really, between 2020 and 2022, that fund was very close to zero. So that's why those were as adjustments each year. I honestly think at this point, this year, the $20,000 was recommended as just a carryover from last year. And there wasn't necessarily a comparison of what was actually available as a resource. With that being said, I think for my purposes, it would be nice to have a definition of what exactly the town or the rest of the members can define as this maintaining and repairing emergency services is. Potentially establishing a level that fund should be around, when that way there's guidance on, okay, during budget cycle, if there's only $10,000 in that fund and we want 50, well, that budget amount should be based off of maintaining a certain threshold. And then lastly, I was disappointed that the fire commission didn't consider the lighting fixture. The hope was not to have that be cut from the budget, because those were repairs that probably should be done, but to reconsider that $5,000 lighting repair from using those existing $80,000 ESB funds. So the goal, the village we weren't telling the fire commission that we didn't want to have that expense. We were saying it should have came from that bucket. So just hopefully they have some additional conversation about that. And again, I sent some documents out today. You know, one of the discussions too we had was some members of the committee think that, you know, that's what that fund is for, little expenses here or there. There's also a budget line item in the ESB budget for $3,000 for that. So this is where the definition, when is it supposed to be coming out of that operating budget as opposed to the emergency repair fund? And I think that will help both municipalities out greatly. Any questions for me on that item?
No, and I don't think the commission intentionally didn't discuss the lighting. I think things got a little focused on the 20,000 and we moved into the next agenda item. So we can bring that up at our meeting in January.
Sorry, I need clarity. So once we define it, then what after?
So there's a couple, in my opinion, and again, it's the board's decision on what they want to provide to the fire commission, but I think it's important to define what that is. Either establish a threshold that you want to keep that fund at, which should be a conversation that the town has and the village has. And then if they don't want to establish that level, then there should be at least a reason why that balance is building. So if they're insistent that it should be $20,000 for each municipality, the balance is $120,000. That's why we were asking for a 5-year plan, because we're starting to see an incremental increase in that balance and no adjustment of what the contribution levels were. And I think they asked do we have a maintenance plan for our facilities, which I say yes. You know, we have, we take our facility maintenance very seriously and have general plans for it. But again, we're not going to replace something that's not broken. So we have those contingencies in there. But again, high level plans, it costs about $30,000 a year to maintain village facilities.
So Cameron, would we define maintaining and repairing? And do you have a suggested definition of what that might look like?
I would be curious what they've been doing. So it would be nice to have them define, well, what's going in the operating building maintenance as opposed to what's being considered in the building maintenance, or and that's maybe a start. I personally think whenever you're repairing or replacing an existing fixture, that would fit that definition. Obviously, there's only a limitation of resources available. So if a request exceeded resources available in the emergency service fund, I think the board would also consider, that at a future board meeting date.
So Cameron, are you suggesting in this fire protection agreement between us and the town that under, what is it, section 5C, the Emergency Services Building Repair Fund would have a target amount that every year we would target a certain amount through the budgeting process?
A couple strategies. I think at a high level, it would be a good idea when they're going into budget decisions to be like, okay, there's a reason for what this balance is. Okay, do we want it to be 120,000? Are we working our way up to 200,000? Or if this is really for small expenditures, like a $5,000 light fixture, last year there was a $35,000 camera and security system that we contributed for. Again, outside of this fund, again, that's fine. But
that's not maintenance. Cameras aren't a repair. I mean, if
it was replacing an existing security system.
Okay.
And again, that's why I think it's really important to have these conversations. So we don't want to end up here again. I think we want to be very clear in what should be included and what shouldn't be included going forward.
I think part of the conversations were major expenses like the roof and HVAC and things like that are getting really old.
Yeah, and I think, so what is challenging is with that building reaching the age it is, I think the last thing that the board wants is a random or a unexpected $100,000 that we now have to fit in our plan. And so we do 10-year capital planning, 10 years. So this year they submitted $50,000 for a study, a facility, a fire and EMS study to study the space, I think in 26 or 7, and then a $2 million implementation of that study. That's great if that's the plan, but would that remodel include HVAC, roofs, other stuff, or is that just to expand certain areas? And it's just really to start that dialogue with them.
I mean, there should be a plan for the roof. I mean, they've been patching it for a number of years. Is it next year or the following year? Well, where's the plan? And it just same
Yeah,
with
I
HVAC.
don't know if some history might be helpful, but my understanding is the additional money was added for the purpose of replacing the roof. When we had some major repairs done roughly 5 years ago, the roofing company estimated that a full roof replacement should be planned for it within the next 5 years, which would be where at over $100,000, where the $40,000 or $20,000 total came from.
Thanks, Chief. I mean, I think that's the thing that wasn't said, though. That's the thing that's not being said by some of the members is there should be a plan. And
yeah, I agree, and verbiage would help. And lighting would help too.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't have extra vision, so.
Yeah, I mean, the lighting should be taken care of under that fund now. It's at 80,000. And if the plan is in 2 years to do the roof, so be it. What's the estimated cost of that? Or if it's, it's immediate, then, that would have been good to know, but we don't know. And that's the struggle I think that the commission or the committee members are having, commission members are having, and I think this board is having, is we're building this fund up for what reason? Again, we know that the roof needs to be replaced. Is it in 5 years? Is it in 3 years? Is it 2 years? I would think you'd have an idea based on what you've heard from those experts that were on the roof saying, you got to, well, say 5, but really it's probably 2 or 3. They'll tell you. And you'll also know by the number of leaks you're getting additional after repairs too. I mean, so somebody knows.
Yeah, I think to help the fire commission, I'll bring in the contractor to see if they can do another full inspection and give us a better idea.
Thanks, Chief.
And again, there should be clarity on what the fund is, as Cameron is saying, I think. I mean, I've seen that nodding heads by board members. I think that would be helpful. And then, again, if we know there's a big expense coming, it'd be good to know that, so that if that's necessary, the roof's going to be 150,000. We build it up to a point when it's needed. Not saying that's what it is, but I have no idea.
So Cameron, assuming that the answer is something like repairing and replacing fixtures is the definition of maintaining and repairing, not the large, but did I understand it right that if a repair or replacement exceeds X dollar amount is when it would come back to the village boards, or I don't know if I heard that right.
Yeah, and that's where we wouldn't want to contradict the fire agreement. So the fire agreement calls out specific levels of when it requires additional approval. So I think we would want to work together on that to make sure we're not contradicting ourselves. And again, this is all a collaboration effort. That's a shared facility of essential public safety. So I think it's in everyone's best interest. Again, how do we make sure that that facility is properly maintained? Because it does sound like lights are desperate need of being replaced, and again, we sit on an $80,000 balance, and it looked like there was a good inventory of lighting and things that could have been adjusted and fixed. So I just kind of making this board aware that there are things out there. So if we define the major repairs to be a parking lot and a roof, those are the only major repairs that come out of that fund. And then miscellaneous repairs and maintenance would also come out of there. That would be, in my opinion, an acceptable definition.
And then that would inform how much of a minimum to carry in that fund?
Yeah, it would be kind of like a target. So very similar for our sewer fund. We have a fund that we have to every year contribute to meet And so this year we bought a Vector truck at no cost, like essentially at no cost, almost a $500,000 piece of equipment that had been saved for the last 20 years. So there's a reason for the contribution.
And Cameron, the spreadsheet that you sent, that's like all the expenses that come out of that repair fund, is that, and then deposits into, so like the compressor, the air dryer, wireless upgrades, those are, in the $1,400 range. But then there's like fishbowl remodeling, that's 21,000. I mean, that doesn't just like spring up out of the middle of nowhere. Or remodeling, I mean, it generally has to be, unless you're remodeling because of some significant event.
Correct. Those things should come out of nowhere. And like same with like capacity issues, let's say fire department or EMS is running out of certain spaces and areas, that should be relatively, let's say fire, we're getting to the point where we don't have capacity for X crew. We anticipate needing it by 2030. And again, nobody has a crystal ball to know exactly, but just to make sure we're prepared so our residents don't suffer from poor planning.
Guys, got enough information to go back?
Sure.
All right. Anything else from fire? Okay. Then we'll move on to Law Enforcement Committee. I'll take a swing at this one. We met on the 26th of November. We, as Cindy alluded to in the peer court discussion, we did talk about restorative justice of juveniles and realignment there, making it a little bit more efficient as far as that goes, and that efficiency may end up eliminating the need for peer court, and those would flow through law enforcement. There still is an agreement that has to be signed or has to be worked out with Briar Patch again, and Cindy alluded to that too. And so that's with the legal team yet, and so this will come back to the Law Enforcement Committee as those things get ironed out. Initial introduction of the strategic plan, our plan for the PD is ending next year, end of next year, 2025. So Chief's already getting ahead of that and talking about having a work group assembled to kind of get that moving forward and get it at least in a form that both the Law Enforcement Committee can look at and then ultimately this board can consider. So we just introduced that topic, and again, looking for potential volunteer from LEC member. And then went through chief's reports. Again, nothing really to note there, which is a good thing. The officers are busy, which is, again, as I expected, but nothing out of the ordinary there as far as that goes. And then just touched on the alternate parking practice that we've had the last few years. That's if somebody does get a parking ticket through January, I can't remember, 1st, I think. From now, they can bring in a food item to donate to our local food pantry and have that parking ticket nullified. So that was it. Did I hit everything, Sarah or Chris? Anything I missed? All right. If that's the case, then we'll move on to reports from village officers. Rick, you want to talk anymore tonight?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Then with communication, miscellaneous business, consider the vouchers.
I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion second. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Correspondence, I had an anonymous letter delivered in the mail today. And this was, this person lives in the Shady Grove area. They had a pile of brush on County BB for the past months. They contacted the Superintendent Beacon 3 times. Well, Superintendent Beacon is retired, so I don't know when the timing of this is. Village has more employees, higher wages than ever before, and terrible responses. Prior years, you could call JJ at the Public Works or the Public Works foreman, and not anymore. So we'll try to figure where this pile is, and I'll get this over to the Public Works team. Fortunately, I can't get back to this person because they did not have an address or anything on this note, but we'll dig into it. Anything from anybody else? All right, upcoming community events. I think it's, somebody already mentioned the parade and all the associated events for Christmas in the Grove this weekend coming up. Anything else somebody wants to shout out either about that or anything else that's going on? All right, should be a good time.
Santa on the Line is still, it's coming. You can register for Santa on the Line. Santa will return a kid's call.
That's right.
So
That's in a week or so, I think.
we're
Yeah.
pretty lucky to have Santa like right at the ready, so.
Absolutely.
Pretty cool.
And the library board does have a sensory Santa time on Sunday as part of Christmas in the Grove.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Cindy. Future agenda items, anything, Matt, you want to call out, or Aaron, anybody? We've got some we already covered that we're going to come back. All right. Then we'll start the gauntlet here for closed session items. Only 3 tonight, so there you go. All right, I'd like to start off with we'll do these individually. Motion for closed session in regards to damage claim from charter. The Village of Cottage Grove Village Board will enter a closed session pursuant to state statute 19.85, parentheses G, conferring with legal counsel for the government body who are rendering an oral or written advice concerning the strategy opted for the body with respect to litigation in which may likely be involved in. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Heidi.
Dole.
Aye.
Gage.
Aye.
Cal Nelson. Murphy.
Aye.
Stoa.
Yes.
Valencia.
Aye.
And Williams.
Aye. Next, Village Board would like to go into closed session regarding extending a lease agreement for a property at 612 North Main Street in TID number 9. The Village of Cottage Grove Board will enter a closed session pursuant to state statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, deliberating and negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, the conducting of other public business wherever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, seconded by Cindy.
Williams.
Aye.
Valencia.
Aye.
Stoa.
Yes.
Murphy.
Aye.
Nelson. Cal Nelson, sorry. Gage.
Aye.
Dahl.
Aye.
All right. Next then, I'd like to make the motion to the village board go into closed session regarding possible amendment to a development agreement with Supreme Structures in TID number 5. The Village of Cottage Grove Board will enter a closed session in pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, deliberating and negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting otherwise public business wherever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Is there a second? Second from Lorene. Roll call then.
Dahl.
Aye.
Gage. Cal Nelson. Murphy. Stoa.
Yes.
Valencia.
Aye.
And Williams.
Aye. We are in closed session.